Two, hello, check. Hello. Hello. I was gonna have another iced coffee here, but I had to make new ice cubes, and I just went to make one, and the ice cubes were not totally frozen yet. Very disappointing. I was gonna have another. It's in the AM. It's Rob AM now. I was gonna have a second iced coffee, which I think that may have been a third at this point. It's still hot. It's even hotter than it was yesterday. It's even hotter than it was yesterday, so I'm going to sip on my ice-cold Coke Zero Cherry to cool off. It's one thing in the day, but it's tough at night when the heat just doesn't go down. I think the coolest it got last night was like 84 degrees or something like that. It's just too much. It's too much. I don't like it. And I had a warm little guy sleeping in my bed at the same time, which was not comfortable. I'm going to go make some hot dogs for lunch and watch the Rob Rousseau show. What do you put on your dogs, Marty? I'd be interested to know. What's your go-to? What's your go-to dog condiment, dressing, addition thing? What do we got? I would love a hot dog right now, actually. Mayo, this killer chipotle mustard, and relish if available. That sounds pretty good. That sounds nice. I love a little mayo on the hot dogs as well. I know you couldn't believe that from looking at me, but I do. I really do enjoy it. It's good. It's very nice. Hello there, fellow patriotic socialists. Yeah, I'm a patriotic socialist. I'm patriotic for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That's my patriotism. I'm a proud Chinese patriot as well, and a Cuban patriot, and proud of it. Excuse me. If the Soviet Union was still around, I'd be patriotic to that too. I'm a proud Laotian patriot. We're taking it back. We're taking the term back. I didn't even take a shower today. Like it's the type of like heat and humidity that it's just like, just don't even want to get in there. I guess you could take a cold shower. That might be kind of nice, but I'm just immediately sweaty. I'm just like instantly sweating through all my clothes. So it just feels like, what's the point? You know? Why even do it? Ravishing rancid Rob. I wouldn't say I'm rancid. If I was rancid, I would take a shower. Honestly, like, I'm not really that smelly of a guy. I don't think, anyways. Maybe you just don't notice, but I don't really have that. That's not really that much of an issue for me. This goddamn heat had me take cold showers when I normally didn't. I went for a nice dip in the pool the other day, the public pool. That's nice and cold. That was very refreshing. My new job is outside, and I swear if I wasn't such a big wet boy, it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, fuck. I don't know what it's like where you are right now, Weenus, but it's just so humid. Like I feel like it's in like a swamp. Like everything feels thick. There's no breeze. There's a little bit more of a breeze today. It's frustrating too because a couple nights before it had gotten really nice at night, really nice and chilly. I had the open window with the chilly breeze coming in and the blanket. Very nice. Very relaxing. Right now it's just misery though. How's everyone doing? Are you happy that the show is back on a regular schedule now? The summer months are going to go behind us eventually. Weather-wise, they're still with us, but almost made the 11 a.m. start time. Almost came very close today. I wish it was 84 here. Fuck me. What are you dealing with right now, Red Wizard? What are you dealing with now? I was listening to Jack Allison on the Doughboys pod this week. They mentioned how doing rightward pivot would be so much easier and they do make way more money. It seems like it. Yeah, the whole like Marxist streaming thing is I love doing it and it's a reflection of my actual values, but it's not where the big bucks are. Unfortunately, to pivot rightward like that, you have to sell out everything you believe in and become just this soulless husk. So I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. I should get Jack Allison to come on the show. He's got that new book coming out. Should I get Jack Allison to come on the show to talk about his book? That'd be fun. I'll reach out to Jack. It was good having him last year to talk about Avatar. I would love to hear about this book situation. That's right. Last time he was on was Avatar 2. That's correct. What is the forecast? Can't handle this shit. And when I open, like I use Windows to open the forecast, and it opens it in like... What is even the name of the browser now? Edge. They gotta stop trying to launch these browsers. Like they at least had the Internet Explorer branding. Like what is changing to Edge? Like what has that really done? We got a heat warning right now. The warm and humid air mass will remain until Friday. Combined temperature and humidity values will give humidex values between 35 and 40 over a number of areas in the afternoon. Ugh. Yeah, it seems like on the weekend it's kind of breaking. You got Friday, and then the weekend is going to be rainy and cloudy and a lot cooler. That's going to be nice. Yeah. I don't know. I can't even think. Can't even think in this temperature. Usually my brain's firing. All the synapses are firing. And I'm ready to go. I've also been downing so many iced coffees. I just feel like my brain is like in a fog. I got major brain fog right now because of this humidity. So I did get started a little bit earlier. I got to get off at 2:30. I got a hard stop at 2:30. I got to bring my kid to the dentist, as I mentioned. I think starting next week, a couple days a week, I'll be able to go a little bit longer. So I will settle into like a real schedule for this shit soon enough. You need to stop at 2:30. 2:30 for the dentist. Oh my, Mondo Michel. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Ridiculous. What did I even plan on doing today? I wanted to talk about this Jackson Hinkle thing that I didn't do yesterday. Is there anything else? I don't know. I'm gonna have to, honestly, I'm gonna have to wheel in the video machine, I think, today. I would remove Alien, Terminator, and RoboCop. That's just absurd. Oh, re-movie. Does that mean you would save those or you would get rid of them? I'm confused. You would remove those 3. Trash them, says Grom. Jesus. That's fucking outrageous, Grom. You're just trying to get a rise out of me. You're trying to get a rise out of me, Grom, and it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work, okay? I'm too calm and collected. Well, one thing you can please clap at me for is that I worked a little bit more on my script today, which it's literally been a year since I've made progress on that. Because I've had too much shit going on in my life. And also I have bad brain, and when projects start to build up over time and, you know, you don't do something for a long time and then it gets harder and harder to do. So it's been like months since I've made any progress on that. I'm starting to slowly do that again. Maybe one day I might even finish that. I think it's been like 4 or 5 years now that this thing has been getting tinkered with. Maybe eventually I'm even going to finish it. Who knows? I did some tinkering with that this morning, so I feel accomplished about that. I just need to do some tinkering every day. Why can't I do that? Why can't I do 30 minutes of tinkering a day? If I just did that, it would be finished. So many projects would be finished if I just devoted that small amount of time to it. Script about a non-cult cult. I mean, ultimately, it's a script about that's making fun of Elon Musk. That started long before the whole holes in the cult of Musk started being exposed. Long before the Twitter thing, and long before it became like widespread common knowledge that he's a big dumb asshole moron. But still very relevant. Still very relevant to our times. I'll even tell you guys about it if you want to hear about it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think anyone's going to steal the idea or anything. But it's a pilot to a TV series that's about this like gig worker, this like sad alienated gig worker a few decades from now on this like scorched earth, living this like hellish existence, carrying out whatever like gigs he can to try and scratch together some savings to get a ticket to go to Mars, to go to the Martian colony of this like quadrillionaire tech god-like person who has run this colony on Mars and has all this propaganda about how great it is. It's called Paradise Mars. And he gets an opportunity to go there to be part of his executive page program. And like he worships and idolizes this guy and fantasizes about how great Mars is going to be. And it turns out that it's, wouldn't you believe it? It turns out that it's not quite the idealistic, post-scarcity, beautiful existence that it's being made out to be in the propaganda. The show name? That's right. It's Total Rob Call. It's heavily influenced by Total Recall. I think the elevator pitch is Total Recall meets Silicon Valley. I think that was what we settled on. So maybe eventually I'll finish this thing. No, that was your chance, Mike. That was your chance to rip off my idea, and it's too late now. You blew it. Uber Recall is good, yeah. Have you watched Severance? No, I haven't. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I haven't watched it. Is that something I should be watching? Okay. I can do that. I can do that, folks. I can do that, Marty. Really not looking forward to having to go to the dentist later. There's really there's a lot of things I would rather be doing with my afternoon than going to the dentist. Not even for me. I could probably stand to go to the dentist myself. For one of those provincial writing assignments, I saw half a movie on Showcase and just blatantly ripped off the plot from my short story. I mean, that's all. If you're writing anything, it's all just finding ways to rip off the things that you love and make it your own. I mean, that's anytime you write anything or create anything, if it's music or screenwriting or poetry or whatever. You're just taking all the things you love and ripping them off and turning it into your own thing. Yeah, we already heard the 2:30. I actually have to leave at 2:30. We've already heard the 2:30 pun, some Farquaad. You got here too late. You got here too late. We already went over that. But nice try, though. I give you an A for effort. My pilot idea is for a bachelor comedian living in NYC, just hangs out with his wacky friends. I love it. It sounds great. I've never seen anything like that before. Those hot dogs were good. I'm happy, Marty. How'd you make them? Like on the grill, pan, microwave, boil? What was the bun? Is it toasted? Nuked him? I think that's totally fine. It's not my ideal way to eat a hot dog, but it's also you can't deny the simplicity of it. You can go from not having a hot dog to having a hot dog in like a minute, which is pretty remarkable. You know? That's pretty incredible stuff. I actually kind of liked the idea for a show about a middle-aged political podcaster and streamer living in a wacky apartment complex that I worked on ChatGPT a couple months ago, whenever that was. I was kind of like, yeah, maybe there's something there. Tweak that pilot idea a little so it's a comedy about a bachelor pilot and his goofy friends, except it already existed and it's called The Loop. Or you could make it, instead of NYC, you could make it a bunch of pilots operating a small airport. But that was called Wings, though. That was Wings. Remember that one? Real living in the future vibes. You know, I came up with an idea for an invention the other day. A reverse microwave. So not a fridge, not a freezer, but something you punch in a number and instantly makes something cold. You know? It's a reverse nuking, but it makes it cold instead of hot. What do we think about that? This has already been done in a joke for the movie Haggard. I have not seen Haggard. You could make a new show called Wings and it's about some friends running a fast food place, except this already exists and is Clerks 2. No, I don't think I ever saw Clerks 2. Or 3, for that matter. Oh, this is where people come for the big ideas. The big ideas. I haven't seen Wings in a long time. I used to quite like Wings. Wings is pretty good. Tim Daly. And is it Matthew Weber? Steven Weber. Steven Weber is the guy from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. That could be a fun show to watch on stream and react to. Oh shit, there was an episode of Wings with a Frasier crossover. There's a Frasier crossover.
The tension box.
What? Aren't they relaunching Frasier as well?
Fans, tomorrow at noon in the hangar, we're going to be watching the World Heavyweight Championship fight live from Rome. The challenger Vito Pelleteri versus Carl, the Widowmaker picking.
So you got the giant TV?
46-inch big screen TV with a picture so real that when the punches start flying, you'll want to wear a cup.
Yes. I can't wait for this fight.
King Window, I talked about Studio 60 with Dave Anthony the other day on the podcast. I love Studio 60. It's so stupid and pretentious and bad, but it's also just incredible at the same time. There's something about it that I just love. Like it's so funny, but none of the reasons that it pretends to be funny. I mean, I've talked about this plenty. We've watched the scene from it multiple times. We know the one. I genuinely do. I would actually be into doing a Studio 60 Discord rewatch. That's how much I enjoy it. Or maybe a limited run Studio 60 podcast would be very funny with some celebrity guests. Maybe that's something I need to put in my... Maybe I should take on another big project. What about that? Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to organize and put on a whole other new thing. That'd be fun.
Where'd you get the money for a big screen TV? Those things run $3,000.
No. You just make a small down payment, you take the TV home, and then you bring it back the next day.
Actually, you're allowed to keep it for 2 days, and when I keep it for 3, they never hassle me.
Excuse me, Brian, isn't that illegal?
It's only illegal if we splice into the cable without paying for it.
Well, I managed to splice into that cable, Brian.
Good cast.
Thank you, Will.
Really good cast.
Cable
Wings.
TV is incredible. You can pick up television stations from around the world. Just the other night, I was watching a documentary on the Japanese channel about this race of giant tree trimmers.
I saw that, Lowell. It's a gardening show. Those are bonsai trees.
Who cares about the trees? The people were huge.
Lowell doesn't
So,
understand that
who's
just
everybody
regular-sized
liking to fight?
people.
Oh, I like Pelletieri. 33 wins, 27 by knockout. He's got a sneaky left, and his right jab's a Gatling gun.
Whoa, Faye. I didn't know you were a boxing aficionado.
This is
My
Wings,
first husband
Diego.
wore golden gloves. I was his corner man.
You actually worked in the ring?
I didn't mind the language so much, but the spitting.
Pelletieri is my hero. He and I have a lot in common. We're Italian, we come from small villages, and we both had hard childhoods. Of course, in a few years, I'll still be able to finish a sentence.
Fraser, I'm going to find a phone and call home.
Darling, we've only been gone 2 hours. Our little Frederick is probably still napping, tucked in the pillow of Dagmar's bosom.
Oh, so this must be prior to Frasier. This is a Cheers spin-off. This must be because this is before Frasier because he's still with Lilith. So this is prior to Frasier, tail end of Cheers. Fascinating.
This recent obsession you have with large breasts.
You're an analyst, you tell me.
I'll be right back. Will you be here or in the parking lot ogling the headlights?
Hey, bro. Tomorrow in the hangar, the Pickens-Pelletieri fight on big screen TV.
Oh, you got a big screen TV?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Take it for one day and then return it?
The store owners the only people who don't know about this scam?
Attention, Aeromax.
I feel like he's
Flight
not gonna be able to
9,
return that
service
TV.
From Providence and New York, now arriving.
Yeah, it's
at
Monk
gate
from the hit TV show
number
Monk. That's
Well,
right,
I bet
Tony
this is the group
Shalhoub.
coming over for my seminar.
What kind of seminar?
Low self-esteem.
Yeah, that's my kind of flight. You lose their luggage, they think it's their fault.
I don't remember
Fraser,
this
I've
guy's
just gotten
name.
off the phone with Dagmar. Frederick is fine. Amusing story. The little Dickens was running through the house naked.
Gee, I wonder why she doesn't do that when we're home.
I was talking about the child.
Oh, of course you were. Look, dear, it's my group. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Fraser Crane.
Okay, I don't know. We don't need to watch an entire episode of Wings, Frasier Cheers crossover episode. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that, folks. This is like, what is that? What is that about? Why would we? Why would we do that? I don't know. I don't know why we would. I would like to watch some kind of video though, because it's just too hot to think. I'm in himbo mode right now. Yeah, it was a little airport in Nantucket. We watched like 2 weeks of Man Tracker. Well, but those were when I was doing like 8-hour streams. I think if I'm streaming for 8 hours, we can spend a little time goofing off a little bit. Okay, I got 2.5 hours here. We gotta go. We don't have time for this tomfoolery, shenanigans. None of that stuff. What are other wacky words that you can use to describe that kind of thing? Kerfuffle? No, that's like a fight. I've never heard folderol. I have never heard that before. Never in my life. Is there anything about Cop City indictments for solitary and mutual aid? Solidarity and mutual aid. I definitely think we should look at that. I did see this tweet that I wanted to talk about as well from one of these guys. I don't know this account. Talking about the Cop City thing. I don't know who this is. Swan Marcus. I think this is one of these, like, a bunch of followers that I have in common. I think you see, yeah, this guy saying, normies learning what Cop City actually was is amazing. This is one of those things where when I explain it to people, their instant reaction is, oh, so those protesters were all just morons then? Weird. And he says, yeah, it's a training facility for cops and firefighters, and a bunch of white leftists from Wisconsin and Oregon drove to a heavily black city to throw Molotov cocktails at minority construction workers over it. Strangely, this is not how the New Yorker reported the story. First of all, like, I think when talking about Cop City, it's never been, the whole thing about a city is it's never been described as anything other than a training facility for cops. That was never in question, right? And I find it weird to have some of these, like, ironic post-left types now saying, like, what? It's not even a big deal. Why are people protesting this? It's merely a training facility that they're building for these cops. Like, oh, okay, no. I think that's actually, like, first of all, that's the entire purpose of the whole thing, was to shut down that training facility. There's the taking of the land to do it. Also, the date going back to the George Floyd murder date. I mean, isn't the whole point that the cops are, like, training in, like, urban warfare tactics? Like, isn't it just another example of, like, this heavily militarized police? The fact that they're, like, building these fake cities so they can learn how to properly subdue protest movements. Like, that's something that you should just hand wave away. Oh, that's just a totally normal thing. It's like, it's completely indistinguishable from, like, reactionary people or, like, liberal people. Like, are these people fucking serious? Aren't a ton of their complaints that the US police is not well trained, so let's not build a training facility? Like, is that what people actually think is going on there? They're just building a training facility so these police can get better at their job so they're less violent. Does anyone actually think that is what's going on? Yes, like, seriously, Marty. Seriously. Like, this is just bizarre to me. Like, yeah, of course these militarized police should be totally free to take this land and build this training facility. And it's really only white leftists that are protesting this from outside. I find that really fucking strange that these people are, like, taking this kind of cooler, like, the ironic, detached view of that. Like, to me, any conversation I saw about Cop City ever happening was very clear that it was about a training facility. And you have people protesting that. The cops extrajudicially assassinating one person, trying to cover it up, and now putting out this like RICO case to go after all these protesters on terrorism charges, and these like Brooklyn guys are just like, well, this doesn't seem like anything to me. This just seems totally fine. Like, weird. I find that actually genuinely kind of strange. They're downplaying that. I don't know. Is this a Brooklyn person? I don't know where they're from, but I think it's the same. It's that kind of crowd. From this person says, wait, Cop City is just a police training ground. I thought Atlanta was proposing some draconian new crime bill. But that seems like a you problem. I mean, no one ever said that that's what it was. It's called Stop Cop City because they're building this like fake city so they can train police. Like, what is the issue here? Half the complaints are just garden variety NIMBYism. It's a weird hill to, in one case, literally die on. RICO is bullshit, but man, anarchist priorities. And I think framing this as some kind of like anarchist thing is silly. We talk shit about anarchist priorities all the time, but like, this is a case of people coming together to like, you know, to stop the construction of yet another training ground where they're going to be training these militarized cops into like urban warfare tactics. Is that just like, oh yeah, this is just NIMBYism? NIMBY is completely lost all meaning. It now applies to people protesting a murder squad training ground and voters not wanting a hockey arena to get millions in tax breaks. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, not wanting a cop training facility near you is the same thing as NIMBY. The reaction the cops and the justice system had to the protest literally proves they were right to protest it in the first place. Yeah, and it's like they're just waiting for the next round of protests to crop up so they can go back to using all the same urban warfare psyop military tactics that they were practicing in the original round of protests, and they're going to be even more ready for it. It's just, I find it very strange to be like one of these leftists or whatever and to just downplay the seriousness of that and criticize anyone that's protesting the construction of this like training facility while they're going after them with these RICO charges and treating them like terrorists. And rather than like maybe saying like that seems bad to me, saying like these are all white leftist anarchists who deserve it. And it's another thing too is that they like a lot of these folks, and I don't know this account, I don't know who they are, so you know maybe I don't want to put words in their mouth or whatever. A lot of the same people, though, criticize this, like, liberal identity politics thing. But then, of course, when you're taking this ironic viewpoint of this cop training facility and criticizing all the people that are protesting that, including people that are being extrajudicially assassinated, that's when the identity argument comes in. These are white leftists going to a heavily black city to throw Molotov cocktails at minority construction workers. All of a sudden, that's where the identity argument comes in. When you want to coolly and in an ironically detached way support like this increasingly hostile, increasingly militarized military occupation. And this training facility where they're going to be training in like urban warfare techniques. I don't know. As you know, I don't like starting shit with people, but I just, that tweet came across my timeline today, and I found that really kind of weird to be like supporting the cops, to be it's now become like cool and hipstery and post-ironic or whatever it is to be like, yeah, it's totally fine to build a that's just so minority cops and firefighters can train to become better at their jobs. I find that really fucking weird to me. These are the Biden bros now. The people that have come all the way around to becoming Biden bros. Supporting the creation of Cop City and supporting the cops while they go after all these different protesters and treat them like terrorists, supporting that, but like from the left though. The picture of Elon with his new kids you retweeted is sending me. Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Shit. Sorry. Everything about this is funny and creepy. That look when your 25th and 26th kids are finally the ones that give your life meaning. Elon Musk pictured with Neuralink director Siobhan Zilis. Insider first reported that Musk had quietly fathered twins with Zilis in November 21. How many fucking kids does this guy have? Seriously. But yeah, look at him. This guy loves kids. Look, it's his life finally now makes sense. How many goddamn kids does this guy have? Maybe instead of having more kids and unleashing more of these spawn on the world, perhaps Elon should just try to reconnect with his transgender daughter and maybe accept her as a person and maybe act like an actual fucking parent to her rather than freaking the fuck out and purchasing a social media website for $44 billion because it's so upsetting to you. Maybe he should do that. Yeah, Shiv. Big ups to Siobhan for getting the bag. I don't know. She's the Neuralink director, though. I don't know if we can support that. Yeah, one who reads quietly fathered is so fucking sinister sounding. Director at the monkey killing factory. Elon Musk considers himself a supra genius, and he feels it's his duty to procreate all the time so humanity improves, and I wish I were kidding about this, which is just pure Nazi shit, right? It's just pure eugenics and Nazi shit. This guy thinks he's such a fucking ubermensch that he just simply has to just spread his fucking seed all over the place and infect the whole world with these little things. Not to be mean to Elon Musk kids, maybe many of them will grow up to be nice and cool. You know, they're little kids and they're innocent. I don't mean to be mean. But if he has his way and he's able to mold them into little Musk princelings and princes and princesses, then no. His brain is so perfect it grew all the hair back onto his head and stopped the receding hairline. I mean, as always, it's just the funniest thing. You know, I don't care if you look like this. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever wrong with looking like this. What I do have a problem with, though, is when you spend millions of dollars to get hair plugs or HGH or whatever, having a personal trainer, whatever you have to do to go from looking like that in your early 20s to looking like whatever Musk looks like now with a full head of hair and everything. Which is all, but then like criticizing when kids or teens or even adults have access to gender affirming care or surgeries to improve their own self-image and to feel better about themselves. Like, gender affirming surgeries for me, but not for thee. That seems to be his whole ideology. It's not woke mind virus to get hair plugs and whatever else. It's only woke mind virus when you take, estradiol or whatever, gender affirming hormones or what have you, of surgeries. And that's the thing, you look in the mirror after all the surgeries and you think you're some kind of ubermensch. Look at me, I'm 53 and I look like this. But like, you only look like that because you've spent millions of dollars having surgeries and getting procedures to ensure that you look a certain way. Your gene, this is your gene. Your gene is this. He's not even jacked like Bezos. No, I know. They'll be like the dysfunctional Walton family of Walmart fame, but not if he can keep his wealth until death. I'm 50-50 on that. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe he's going to take an unfortunate trip to a Saudi embassy if he continues losing money on this thing. If he tanks this whole goddamn investment. Of course, he's going to recoup all his losses from the ADL. That's right. When he gets the ADL to pitch in $22 billion, it's going to be smooth sailing for Elon. So I guess the only thing I really had planned, folks, is to watch some of this stuff on. I know it's painful to watch Timcast, but I am interested in paying attention to some of the things that like folks like Jackson Hinkle say and try and determine where the psyop begins and ends. I think it's worth looking at, and also looking how this whole argument from these MAGA communist types that like, oh, I'm normalizing communism because I'm normal and I don't care about pronouns or social justice or racial justice or anything like that. All I care about is like being like, yeah, wrapping myself in patriotic symbols, talking about communism and talking about being like God-fearing and this kind of bullshit. That is like that's the whole idea behind why you would try and adopt this kind of a program. And I think it's actually interesting to see when these folks try to make these arguments to the MAGA crowd, who it's meant to be pitched at, right? They're tailing all their reactionary beliefs so they can bring socialism to the masses. That's what patriotic socialism is. That's what MAGA communism is. We're going to be just as reactionary on social issues as these MAGA guys that love Donald Trump, and we're going to promote socialism to them. They're going to listen to us because we're tailing all their beliefs. But are they listening though? Are they actually? What do they have to say about this? And I'm not so sure that they are listening. I'm not so sure that they're very interested in any of this stuff. The Hassan tweet yesterday was a perfect example. Dakadunan, what the fuck was that? Seriously. When I tell him, he's literally promoting like the stupid point that Hassan, not Hassan from Twitch, but the like Hassan who used to be like a leftist and now has become one of these. He's gotten pulled into this sort of LaRoucheite patriotic socialist orbit. Got the trans brain worms. Hassan Ali, yeah. The incredibly stupid point that he was making about Chinese foot binding and then like trans kids getting gender affirming territory and suggesting that there's gender affirming surgery, and then suggesting that there's some kind of like correlation between these two things, literally sharing like the same image of this like young trans person who had I believe had like a mastectomy or something like that. All these like reactionary types, all the Daily Wire people were always sharing that same image, like literally the same day. And then he does it, but from this kind of like leftist angle, likening to what China's doing, completely absurdly and preposterously. And then when I call this out and say, I'm sure if you keep tailing these reactionary beliefs, we can look at it, fuck. We can look at it. Let's just do a whole segment on this. I don't have time for this bullshit. I don't have time for this bullshit. You're out of here. You're out of here, jokers in the chat. You're gone. I muted him because of how stupid it was. Yeah, here's the, like, this is just beyond stupid. Like, and this guy used to host, the show with Q Anthony. He used to be part of that whole team, squad. The Communist Party of China banned mutilation of young girls when they took power. Liberal America only expands the barbaric trend. Like, how stupid is this? Like, what the hell? Like, if we're gonna at least, and I don't venture into these things very often, but like, if I'm gonna do that, like, what the hell is this is an argument? I say, I'm sure if you're gonna keep tailing the reactionary beliefs of the Daily Wire crowd, they and their audience will become Marxists any day now. And he says, yeah, because the Daily Wire surely cares about the safety of alienated girls. You leftists are closer in ideology to them than you know. Like, what the fuck? I genuinely don't understand what he's talking about, first and foremost. But, like, he's literally contributing to the trans panic that all these Daily Wire guys are fucking obsessed with and spend each and every day promoting. And many of them literally shared this same image. Shared the exact same image. He just gave it this, like, China example. And there should maybe be a content warning for that because it's a grotesque image on the left there. He's contributing to the exact same trans panic that these Daily Wire fucking guys are obsessed with and spend every single day tweeting about. And when I point this very obvious reality out to him, he says, actually, it's you that's closer to the Daily Wire, like, to the Daily Wire. Like, seriously. What is that? What does that even mean? Typically, anything out of the bounds of your insular ideology, such as the real world, is incoherent. I didn't even see that reply until right now. I mean, listen, what's the real world? The real world is that, like, there's been transgender people in our society for as long as there's been human civilization. You can go back throughout history and see numerous examples of this in many different cultures. What's the real world is that this trans panic is being used to, like, whip up extreme hatred towards a really vulnerable group of people. laws are being passed in the highest governments in the United States, in states and local governments, that are targeting people and targeting kids and targeting anyone, teachers or doctors, that treats them with basic dignity. And all these, there's a highly funded, highly organized right-wing propaganda campaign to whip up this kind of panic across multiple continents. And he's sitting there contributing to it and talking about me as if I'm not in the real world, or anyone else that was talking about it. You'll see the same argument used by Maupan, Henkel, Has, etc. This is all out of the Patsok LaRouche playbook. Yeah, and they'll point to the extremely reactionary beliefs that come out of the Russian government when it comes to LGBTQIA plus people and trans people specifically. And they're tailing that. And they view Putin or view the Russians, like who we've talked about, have an alliance with China, are pushing back on like Western hegemony, are pushing back against NATO expansion and these things. We've talked about their perspective of the Ukraine war and why that's worth listening to and acknowledging. But that doesn't mean we need to tail their extremely reactionary beliefs in this non-socialist state that is like doubled and tripled down on this kind of social conservatism. While socialist countries around the world, such as in Cuba, are adopting these very progressive policies towards gay and lesbian and queer and trans people, including China. Like, it's not like he's actually lying about the fucking facts in the first place, pretending that China is part of something like, and this same kind of socially conservative anti-trans thing. And we know that there are problems with LGBTQIA plus rights in China and other places around the world. And it doesn't mean that I'm saying that things are perfect, that they're incredibly progressive, but there is a progressive trend that's going on. In 2021, the country's first ever clinic for transgender children and adolescents was opened in Shanghai's Fudan University Children's Hospital. State news outlet Global Times reported that the goal of the clinic was to safely and healthily manage transgender minors' transition. So, literally doing, like, he's lying in the first place. Not only is the point mind-numbingly stupid, this comparison between gender-affirming care and fucking foot binding, but it's a lie to begin with. The idea that this kind of this socially conservative or anti-trans trend is happening there. Yeah, and we can look at what's going on. Like, if you're a fucking Marxist or a socialist or whatever, you should be paying attention to what's going on in Cuba, for example, who's leading the world on progressive family laws that respect the rights of these groups, these marginalized groups. And even though there was a strain of social conservatism in the USSR, I think that was one of the big mistakes of the USSR, and says more about like the prevailing social attitudes at the time. But we've talked also about how the Nazis were intent on enforcing these very strict gender binaries, burning books and just banning the study of the gender and this kind of ideology. I believe the first like actual sex change operation was in either the USSR or East Germany. This is from 2 years ago. Now that East and West Germany are being united into one country, the laws concerning transsexuals and sex change operations are being reevaluated. East Germany scores higher on transsexual rights than West Germany, but East may not prevail in the new reunited country. As it stands now in East Germany, men and women 18 years and older have been able to receive government-sponsored sex reassignment surgery, get married, and adopt children. According to Professor Gorlick of East Germany, who spoke at a meeting on the subject in Hamburg, in 2 cases, a transsexual mother gained custody of her adopted children after a divorce. The HIB, Homosexual Interessengemeinschaft Berlin, was established in 1973 with the belief that homosexual emancipation is part of the success of socialism, aiming to educate society in this vein. That's what I mean. The whole idea that class war or Marxism or socialism or whatever is just completely separate from social justice, racial justice, women's rights, LGBTQIA plus rights. It's just completely not at all accurate or relevant. There's an unfortunate history that I think you could point to if you really wanted to pick and choose what you were following. Like Cuba, for example, where like they did used to persecute LGBTQIA plus people, and that changed over time as they recognized that that was reactionary, and Fidel personally acknowledged that this was wrong, and now Cuba's leading the world in these progressive laws enshrining rights for these groups. But this is the whole idea about MAGA communism, right? Is that we can talk about class, but totally separate it from all these social issues. Which is silly. Fuck. Like, look at fucking Jimmy Dore. Look at fucking Jimmy Dore talking to Cornel West. Jimmy fucking Dore criticizing Cornel West for focusing on racial justice.
To offer an alternative.
I know these people are obnoxious. I get it, but I think it's important to break down these arguments and talk about why it's wrong. You know, it's helpful for me, and hopefully it's helpful for others. I find these people extremely irritating and horrible as well. But I think it's worth breaking this stuff down.
To the 2 major parties to bring together disaffected members of those parties, along with independents and others who feel alienated from the political system as it exists. And the best way to do this is by running on economic issues that unite us, but which neither major party is willing to address because they're both beholden to the same powerful corporate interests. The Democratic Party long ago abandoned the working class in favor of beating the drum on cultural issues, and now that's all the Democrats have to run on. So if voters are looking for a party running on trans rights and calling Donald Trump and his supporters white supremacists, they can already vote for Democrats. The role of a third party is to focus not on the identity politics that divide us, but on core economic issues that unite us along class lines, like Christian Smalls did at Staten Island. Do you think he led with LGBTQ trans rights and white supremacy, or do you think he organized along class lines? That's what we have to do.
Putting words in Christian Smalls' mouth, who I don't want to put words in his mouth either, but the idea that he's just completely ignoring race or gender or LGBTQIA plus rights is a bit of a stretch, because he's a union organizer. He talks about working class issues and union issues.
to organize, meet people where they are. So what is your plan to organize along class lines, or are you going to keep talking about white supremacy and all those identity politics, which are there, not from the ground up,
lecturing
from the top
Cornell
down,
West
make
about
sure
social
we stay
justice.
divided? What is your plan to organize along class lines?
Well, I appreciate again the clarity and candor of what you have to say. We have profound disagreements, brother. When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not in any way mean it takes me away from class issues. Class issues are crucial. Class issues are fundamental. But it doesn't mean that I'm putting up with white supremacy. One of the problems is that you get too many folk who want to talk class, and can't say a mumbling word about white supremacy, police brutality. Can't say a mumbling word hardly. Or when they do say it, you call it identity politics as if it's not connected to class. I'm hitting these head on. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to strikes. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to
This is not fucking complicated, Jimmy Dore, you dumbass.
When it comes to obsession with profits and the needs not in any way being satisfied. But I'll never for a minute be silent or not raising my voice in terms of vicious treatment of black people, indigenous people, gay brothers, lesbians, sisters, or trans. It's not an either or. And that's where you and I have a deep, profound disappointment.
Empty-headed fucking dumb fuck, Jimmy Dore. No, it's just preposterous. And yeah, you can talk about the way that class unites all these things. Like, I genuinely find it so, because they think that it's alienating to these reactionaries to ever talk about these issues, so you should just shut up about it, right? Just shut up about it. Stop talking about white supremacy. Don't talk about police brutality. Don't talk about the trans panic. Don't talk about women's rights, because it's alienating to these workers, right? That's what it ultimately comes down to. Again, who are these workers? Well, they're white, reactionary, working class, or sometimes petit bourgeois people. These are the folks we've got to tail all their reactionary beliefs and just cater our message specifically to them, ignoring the fact that black people, black and brown people, indigenous people, gay and lesbian and trans and queer people are all working class as well. Completely ignoring that. People that are under attack constantly, women's rights under attack, trans rights under attack. You know, black people disproportionately shot and killed by police in the street, put in this barbaric prison system. And we're supposed to just ignore that because it offends the precious, delicate sensibilities of the real working class, which are these Ford F-150 driving white small business owners, the type of people that were organizing the trucking convoy. And you can talk about that. You can talk about the ways that, like, universal health care, for example, and universal programs can bring people together, right? Universal health care is a really good example. If you have a universal health care program that makes it so anyone can see a doctor if they get sick, that includes abortion. So if anyone that needs an abortion can get an abortion for free, and includes gender-affirming care and sexual reassignment surgery in your universal healthcare program. That's how you bring people together under class lines. But that doesn't mean that you ignore it. Also, like, you look at the way that black women in particular are disproportionately affected by lack of access to healthcare and these kinds of things. So that's this program that brings together all kinds of different people from all kinds of different backgrounds under this class dynamic. But that doesn't mean, whether that's true or not, and it is true, but that doesn't mean that you just pretend that the struggle for social justice doesn't exist. You pretend that the struggle for racial justice doesn't exist, or to just stop talking about systemic racism, or police violence, or mass incarceration, or abortion access being ripped away, or just women's rights in general, or just pretending that these problems aren't there. And I think the people that hold these ideas about universal healthcare, when it comes down to it, these class-only types, whether you want to call them patriotic socialists or MAGA communists or whatever the fuck Jimmy Dore is. I don't even know if you can classify that. I think when it comes down to it, they're saying like, oh yeah, let's not talk about any of these social issues. We'll just focus on universal programs and class. Well, lo and behold, when these universal programs that they're proposing, they say, well, I don't want to pay for I can have universal health care for Medicare for all, but I don't want to pay for someone's sexual reassignment surgery. I don't want to pay for someone's abortion. I think Jimmy Dore types or these patriotic socialists or whatever the fuck you want to call them are going to be the first people to be like, yeah, okay, let's get that out of there. It's true. It's too alienating to these working class communities that we're trying to reach. So let's get that out of there. They're going to be the first one to throw these marginalized identities directly under the bus to pass the program that they want. And thank you, Kijiji Genie, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. I just like the fucking audacity and the idiocy of lecturing Cornel West about not standing up for racial justice is wild to me. You know? It's crazy. Yes, suddenly losing the definition of universal. We're just watching Dore because I wanted to talk about this MAGA communism or patriotic socialist thing. Or yeah, going back to Hassan Ali, who has such bad anti-trans brainworms that he's making this beyond insanely stupid argument comparing gender-affirming care to Chinese foot binding and suggesting that, like, trying to draw some parallel between this anti-trans panic and supporting China, which is just stupid and doesn't make sense and is factually incorrect in the first place. White man interviewer lecturing Cornel West is apparently a whole genre. Maybe I could get Cornel West on this show. I talked about that originally when he was like originally launching with the People's Party that Dore was involved in as well. We kind of balked at the idea. I think it would be great to talk to Cornel West, though. I would be more than happy to. And talk about this very subject, about how all these things are linked. And the same thing, like universal social programs, a job guarantee, access to healthcare, free education, all these kinds of things that we talk about. Yeah, those are going to affect everybody. Those are going to lift up everybody, and that's what we need to be focusing on. But we're not morons, and we're able to talk about universal economic programs and class issues without tailing the reactionary beliefs of some of the world's dumbest people, like Jackson Hinkle is doing on the Timcast program. Here's the post-millennial saying, Timcast guest Jackson Hinkle argues in favor of communism, saying America could learn from the success, and they put a success in quotes, of course. This is the exact crowd you're supposed to be appealing to here. This is the exact crowd you're meant to be appealing to. And here's what the post-millennial says about this statement, and we'll get to the bottom of like what he's actually saying here and what's true about it and what's not.
Do you identify as communist?
Yes.
What is the value of communism?
Orienting government and the economy for the public good.
But I think that's like an oversimplification.
Well,
or idealistic.
You said simply that's what it is. I mean, I think that any communist state that takes form in America is going to have communist values, or American values rather. It's going to be based on the history of our country, the Constitution. I think it would be a Christian communist state, and I think that we.
It's going to be communist based on the U.S. Constitution, and it's going to be a Christian communist state. There's some real historical materialism at play there.
We can learn a lot from China and from the Soviet Union, but you look at China today, their economy is outpacing ours. It's gonna beat ours totally probably within the next 5 to 10 years. You know, Europe is going down, the US is going down. China lifted 845 million people out of poverty in the last 40 years.
And here's this LaRoucheite shitty tactic where he says things that are true, talks about the success of China's and poverty alleviation programs, talk about the way socialism has led to this massive unprecedented development in China, and then using these truth things to advocate for this like white Christian US Constitution respecting version of socialism that apparently is going to exist one day in the United States.
I think that we shouldn't be China, but I think we can learn things from China and the Soviet Union and other countries that have done it successfully.
Successfully?
Do you think
Soviet
China
Union didn't do it successfully? Fell apart.
Yeah, well, they fell apart in 69 years.
Communism with Christo-fascist characteristics. I mean, he had a whole tweet the other day where it was actually amazing because both the tweet and the community note were just complete bullshit. Where Jackson Hinkle was talking about the Soviet man, the God-fearing Soviet man, completely ignoring the role of secularism in the Soviet Union. And then, of course, there's this community note saying, like, the Soviet Union tried to destroy religion and persecuted people and killed everybody, blah, blah, blah. But, like, there was an element of secularity to that. The idea that you can separate that, or at least, like what China does, where they promote religious freedom, but also have sort of, like, a willingness to clamp down on anti-social behavior or separatism or reactionary ideas. Like, you can't use, just because you're religious doesn't mean you can promote violence. You can't promote terrorism. You can't destabilize the region or the nation, which I think is a pretty fair thing. We look at different Soviet states such as Albania, where they did ban religion. Armen Enver's Hoxha. Armen Enver's Hoxha just completely banned religion in Albania. But pretending that like, yeah, this idea of a God-fearing Christian socialism that he's promoting. I mean, it's just red, brown shit. It's Strasserite shit. It's LaRoucheite stuff. It's embarrassing. And but the thing is, you're tailing these people's beliefs. You're tailing the biggest reactionaries in your society to try and make this idea of socialism appealing to them. And first of all, you're absolutely right that the Soviet Union was a huge success. It was a massive success in raising living standards for millions of people. People talk about it like a failure. Well, did it fail or was it destroyed? You know, obviously mistakes were made. There were contradictions. There were bad things that happened. But it was also destroyed deliberately and undemocratically. You know, when you're trying to build a new kind of society with the world's greatest military power and this massive reactionary empire breathing down your neck the whole time, forcing you to spend billions of dollars that you don't necessarily have on arms, getting involved in this arms race, lo and behold, that leaves less resources for social services and continuing to raise people's living standards. But despite all those obstacles, though, as we've talked about, they did significantly raise living standards for millions of people and give millions of people access to literacy and education and healthcare and jobs and housing that they did not have before under the czarist system. So yes, it is successful. Yes, socialism is successful in Cuba as well. They say the same thing. Look how poor Cuba is. Look at the buildings. They're all falling apart. It's a massively successful example of socialism because it's all been done in spite of the world's largest military power and largest economy right next to them, putting their thumb on the scale for the last 80 years and trying to destroy them for the last 80 years unsuccessfully. That's a huge success. Or in DPRK as well. The Greek communist movement contained multiple priests and bishops in its socialist struggle against Nazi Germany. They also understood that religion is a struggle and consciousness that cannot be defeated in a snap of the finger. Dialectics, folks, it will do a lot for you. Or Latin America as well. Long history of religious figures promoting like socialism and decolonization in Latin America as well. Which sometimes leads like left-leaning Latin American countries to have reactionary policies as well when it comes to women's rights or other things. That doesn't mean, though, that we need to tail that and try and replicate that. And you can critically support somewhere that does have these kinds of tendencies without trying to pretend that we need to absorb the same kind of tendencies.
Do you identify as communist?
But look, this is the crowd. I mean, you're supposed to be appealing to people. It would be different this time. For the public good, as determined by who? The government? No thanks. Hard pass. Get wrecked. These are all the MAGA guys. These are all the blue check MAGA guys. America first. That's the exact type that fucking Jackson Hinkle and these morons are trying to appeal to. No thanks. Hard pass. Get wrecked. Blinking guy face. Mao killed 65 million people. Define success. Hard pass. Libertarian Party. That all these people, like the gray zone types even, were trying to organize with these libertarians, organize anti-war rallies. They're laughing about it. The same Soviet Union that collapsed in the 90s. Success in reducing population, which is not even true. And then Hinkle responds to his own fucking interview. Because he's the only one saying anything positive about it. Our 70 million deaths is success. It's funny he believes propaganda from China. And then you have a few MAGA communists trying to stop the tide of nonstop reactionaries mocking this. Commie Jackson, principled patriot, says Commie Jackson Hinkle might want to take a closer look at history. The success he speaks of came at the cost of millions of lives and severe human rights abuses, of which still go on today. I'm sure principled patriot has never supported a human rights abuse in their entire lives. I'm positive. Freedom and individual rights aren't commodities to be traded for perceived economic success, which is ironic because that's exactly what America does to its own citizens and people around the world each and every day. But like this is the reaction. This is what you get when you try to bring socialism to the people by adopting this, like, or speaking to these socially conservative audiences, speaking to these reactionary audiences, trying to tail or adopt socially conservative or reactionary ideas when it comes to women's rights or social justice or racial justice or the police or trans people or whatever it is. You know? And this is the LaRoucheite scam. Like taking what should be a completely true, correct, and principled position. We should look at a massive development over the last since the Chinese Revolution. Look at that and learn from that, rather than constantly trying to saber rattle and trying to create conflict with them, which should be just a totally true, uncontroversial statement. And then you take these true statements, you mix them with these completely wacky, fucking stupid ideas, which has the overall point of completely confusing everybody involved and disrupting and wrecking whatever movement there might be of people that are actually principally having these kind of viewpoints. Hinkle's job is to confuse and conflate things, not actually build a communist movement. Yeah, and I'm reluctant to like Fed jacket people, but I do genuinely think that he's just like a U.S. government employee. I do actually think that. Where is he? That's going to be a no from me. Just everyone is just mocking this. All the very people that he's trying to appeal to. Jackson Hinkle. It even sounds like a fake name. Either an absolute moron or part of a psyop. Porque no le dos. Look at this fucking guy. Jesus Christ. And of course, you've got Hassan promoting his stuff. Good. Yeah, it's all this mix of like talking about Ukraine and saying some true things about China, about Ukraine, and then mixing it with this like completely reactionary, like 4chan anti-trans panic bullshit. Like, give me a fucking break with this guy. It's also funny that this guy, he came from like the Bernie world, and he was like a Bernie, and he was part of the March for Our Lives, like student activist like core. That's how he got his start doing this stuff. Yeah, how does he look like 10 years older than me? I'm 40 years old. Jesus Christ, Jackson. Yeah, see, and he's got to go check in with his bosses. He's got to go check in with his bosses before he goes to visit Russia. You know, it's just, I know people are tired of hearing about this stuff. I know it's annoying to talk about what the patriotic socialists or the MAGA communists. I think there was another, they had another name for themselves that I think I'm forgetting. I know it's annoying to hear about, and I know it's annoying to look at some of these clips, but I do think it's still worth breaking these things down, because when we need to understand these trends and understand what the goal of these types is, the next time there's some reactionary movement that they tell us that we need to be supporting, such as the trucker convoy. Back in the Bernie days, I perceived the left as being far more uniform and coherent than it really is. Yeah, tell me about it. The only thing Jackson did good was get VJ on before you, making you upset enough that you finally reached out and emailed your now best friend, VJ Prashad. That's right. That's absolutely correct. I can't remember if I had anything else about this. I don't want to look at any more of the clips. I just find them too obnoxious. I find them way too obnoxious. It's annoying, but it's important to recognize wreckers when you see them. Yeah, I think so. I think so. And like I said, because as I've talked about often when it comes to this guy or Haas or whoever, they'll say things about China or the Soviet Union or Ukraine or any of these things that will sound like they make sense. They'll mix in a generous helping of truth, and then they use that to take people that are kind of disillusioned with the way our media frames things. People that have this understanding of history, they take them and they try and pull them down this reactionary path. This is the LaRoucheite agenda. The LaRoucheite, the Strasserite, whatever you want to refer to these people as. And that's why I tell people that you can, in fact, continue to be a staunch opponent of imperialism, and you can stand firmly against NATO proxy wars in Ukraine or anywhere else. You can critically support China or whatever other nation. You can talk about these things, and guess what? You can also have progressive social values when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to LGBTQIA plus rights, or the trans panic in particular, or racial justice, or systemic racism, racial justice, or mass incarceration, or any of these things. It's entirely possible. I know some people have a really difficult time with this. Both the liberals do and these types do. But you can hold these two thoughts in your mind at once. It seems like I'm often telling people that. I think it's one of the main lessons I try to impart on people. Yeah, no, exactly. The fact that some of the loudest anti-war advocates currently are these shitheads it's extremely dire. And then you have progressives in the US government or the Democratic Party being totally on board with supporting NATO proxy wars and funneling arms to Ukraine and a lot of their allies in the sort of progressive media sphere. And then you have these motherfuckers saying, no, we shouldn't support NATO proxy wars. No, yes, this was caused by NATO expansion. Yes, this was caused by us arming and funding these Nazi militias in eastern Ukraine. And then people see these are the only people that are making this argument, and they're like, well, this is like a conservative thing. This is like a far right conservative opinion now. Yeah, it is dire, and that's exactly why I've continued to try and can maintain this kind of advocacy, anti-war advocacy, while simultaneously standing alongside black and brown people, indigenous people, gay and lesbian and trans and queer people whose rights are under attack. I don't think it's that hard to do, but many people seem to struggle with this. I should let you know, folks, it's an hour and a half into the stream. Take a short break now that I've been ranting and raving and hooting and hollering. I got another hour and a half to go. Like I said, I'm going to go at 2:30 to bring my kid to the dentist. We're 1 out of 35 subs so far, so I should just remind folks that if you enjoy this program, everybody, if you like my analysis, if it's refreshing to hear some of these arguments that aren't wrapped in this bullshit patriotism, that doesn't forget about the idea of settler colonialism, that tries to promote this reactionary agenda like these guys are doing, well, it's our analysis. That's right. Well, yes, I'm bringing my son to the dentist at 2:30. Yes. We've been over this. But folks, the only way that I'm able to keep doing this show each and every day...
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
The only way that I'm able to do this show each and every day is through the endless, boundless generosity of you, the viewer, the chatter, the listener, such as Max L49. Max, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Very, very kind of you. Thank you for that. So if you can, folks, before we move on, if you can support this stream with a $5 subscription, which right now is, if it's your first subscription, is on a discount because of Slubtember, or with a gifted subs batch like Max just very generously donated as well. It helps me out a lot. It helps keep this program on the air. It helps my little number continue to rise.
You're gonna have good old Rob to.
As you know, I must make the little number go up every day. Comrade Bushy, thank you for the gifted sub.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through
and
all
thank
this.
you, Weird Luck, as well for the 6 months tier 1. Very much appreciated. We are coming up on 3 years of doing this show. We're going to be starting season 4 very soon. There is a brand new year 3 sub badge as well.
To mark up the size of the account.
TRRS Rob mode.
Risk Inverse, thanks for the 500 friend coin. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Do you get a call from Bezos if the number is too low? Yes. Bezos is like, I'm trying to build another wing onto my mansion.
Old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm trying to build another wing onto my mansion. You got to get out there and sing and dance for slubs. So funnel those money up to the world's richest man. Diego, thank you for the gifted sub. And we do have a bit of a hype train going now too. I don't even know if I can shimmy and do a little dance. I briefly just thought about that, but I don't know if I can handle it. It's so hot still. I just don't know. Maybe I could do a subdued little shimmy or something. If you don't do it for Rob, at least we can raise some money for our economy's top dog, Jeffrey Bezos. That's right. So I'll just take a couple minutes here, folks, to try and make the number go up. If you can, please subscribe to the program.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
every little
to,
bit really helps a lot.
This.
TRRS Yatrak, TRRS Yatrak, TRRS Yatrak.
Pathogen, thanks for the 16 months. Tier 1. If you'll just allow me a little brief 5, 6, 7 minutes here. As you know, I must make the little number go up. Every single day. It's my curse, and it's a blessing, to have a very supportive community. Through your support, folks, you've helped me recover from the fact that I had to take some unplanned time off. And it's been very, very incredible. The fact that people have supported this program today and every other day and over the last 3 years. Bezos sits you down like Makana. You gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. That's exactly what he says. TRRS has an exclusive Enver's Hoja emote. Thank you, Kijiji Genie. I believe that is the only Enver's Hoja emote on this entire platform. Submerge that beautiful face into some fridge water. Well, that's when I get through this segment, I will get some fridge water as some nice refreshment. So the more people the sooner you subscribe, folks, the sooner I'm going to have access to life-giving, freezing cold water to refresh myself. And if people don't subscribe and I get heat stroke, that's on you. That's on you. If you're comfortable with me getting heat stroke, sweating my ass off here for your entertainment and enjoyment and amusement. Like I said, folks, the MAGA communism grift, it seems to work pretty well for people like Jackson Hinkle. When you got the LaRoucheite funds backing you up. When you've got the LaRoucheite funds and the United States government backing you up, you can make a pretty decent living doing this kind of streaming stuff. When you're one of these conservative guys, or the guys in the car with the sunglasses, or
you can count on me.
Whatever.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
When you're a principled socialist, anti-imperialist, like me, lo and behold, the audience for that shrinks. And I don't get any foreign funding. I don't get any state funding. I don't get any corporate funding. I just have you, folks. I just have you. You want Rob to have relief, don't you? Moss, thank you for the gifted sub. We are 35% of the way to level 3. Do we hear level 4? Do we hear level 4? Probably another 5 gifted subs could do it. China's biggest foreign policy L is not funding the stream. I agree. They're missing a big opportunity with that. They're missing a really big opportunity. I don't get any Soros bucks either. I got no bucks. I got no Putin bucks, Xi bucks, Soros bucks, no think tank bucks, corporate, nothing.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship
Oh my god, Risk Inverse, thank you so much. Right at the last moment, Risk Inverse. No Hoja bucks either. Thank you so much, Risk Inverse, for the 5 gifted subs. I don't think my frame rate issues have ever been totally solved. Imagine you could all be that foreign influence we're hearing about if Xi stepped up. Exactly. We can all be doing foreign influence right now. Do any other brave heroes want to step to the plate, folks? Do we hear 20? Do we hear 20 subs? Believe me, this is just as painful as it is for me. as it is for you. It's probably more painful. It's probably even more painful. I'm so bad at trying to play this incredible drum solo. I can't do it. It's really amazing that they mapped all that onto like a MIDI performance. It's truly incredible.
Simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Bleep Lord,
Dance
thank you.
boy dance.
Thank you, Bleep Lord, for the 200 friend coin. I'm so excited for my fridge water. I almost just want this segment just to be over just so I can go get some because I'm very thirsty and I'm very warm. Do we have any other takers, folks? Again, do we hear 20 subs? Do we hear 20? That's totally doable. I think that's totally doable.
Just don't count on me and have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Kijiji, thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate that one. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
TRRS drums, TRRS drums.
I don't see Jackson Hinkle doing this shit. This is one thing you don't get when you tune into the Jackson Hinkle stream. Greasy Groob 69. 4 months of Prime from Greasy Groob 69. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Oh, thank you, folks. I gotta get some water. I gotta take a break. Well, I guess I got another 45 seconds left. Then I'll go take a little break and have some water. Thanks so much, everyone, for
count on me.
supporting the show.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Hello there.
Hello there. Ainsley, thanks for the 14 months tier 1. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So no one else subscribe. No one else subscribe because I want to go get water in 30 seconds. So if you could please refrain from any more donations or subscriptions, I can get out of this segment. I go get a little sip of water, come back, and we can have some more serious discussion. Thanks again so much, everyone, for supporting the show. By the way, I should announce, actually, I got a really cool episode coming up next week. I haven't scheduled a time yet, but I will very soon. Talking with Ben Clarkson, cartoonist Ben Clarkson, who is putting out a new book with another cartoonist, Matt Bors. Ben Clarkson just did, if you saw the release of the Blowback podcast, the cool animated intro to that was done by Ben Clarkson. Really cool person. Ben Clarkson and Matt Bors are going to come on the show next week to talk about their new book. Apparently there's one in the mail for me. I'm really looking forward to getting it. Ben Clarkson and Matt Bors will be appearing on TRRS next week. I'll finalize that the time over the next couple of days, and I'll announce the actual time, and that'll be really great. Really looking forward to that. So I'll just take a brief break, okay? I'll take a brief break. I will come back, and we'll hang out some more. Okay, so don't go anywhere. And I'm going to go get some delicious, refreshing fridge water. Okay? Don't leave. You're not allowed to leave. Be right back. Oh, so cold.
Welcome to People's Video Audio, a series of talks
It's
by
speech
author
time.
and political analyst Michael Parenti. His books include Democracy for the
Let's
Few,
let's learn a little bit
Against
more about
Empire,
this.
and Dirty Truths.
A lot of these people try to hold up
Today's
Parenti as
talk
being
is
their kind of idol, talking
superpatriotism
about
and the importance of being number
patriotism
one.
and the importance of
How superpatriotism,
appealing to this
as
kind
an
of
expression
patriotic
of
sensibility.
militarism, is used to manipulate the public. It was given in Boulder,
What's the
Colorado,
name of the book that Matt
August
Boers worked on?
1988. Here's Michael Parenti.
The title of the talk is Superpatriotism, Real Patriotism, and the Importance of Being Number One. Well, as a guest
It's called
on
Justice
radio
Warriors.
talk shows, I have on a number of occasions criticized U.S. foreign policy, and one time an irate caller called in and he said to me, do you love your country? And the question was obviously rhetorical, because here was someone who saw fit to question my patriotism because I was questioning the policies of our leaders. It's really strange when you think about it. The caller was manifesting a symptom of what might be called superpatriotism, also sometimes called stupor-patriotism, also called pseudo-patriotism, a phenomenon best defined as the willingness to follow our leaders uncritically in all their dealings with other nations, especially when those dealings are confrontational and belligerent and they involve a question of national pride or the use of military force. That's the definition of superpatriotism. This superpatriotism or American chauvinism has been with us throughout much of our history.
American chauvinism. Weirdly Parenti, who a lot of these people uphold, is against that. And I tried to do the 1.25 speed and it sounds weird. I can't do it. Hey, Grad Babes, how's it going? Welcome. How was your holiday?
And whether or not it's
Yeah,
the
there it
last
is, right off the bat.
definition of superpatriotism. This superpatriotism or American chauvinism has been with us throughout much of our history. And whether or not it's the last refuge of scoundrels, as Dr. Johnson would say, it certainly is a very effective instrument in discouraging and discrediting critical public discourse.
And I will, before we even listen to this speech, I will try to sum up Parenti's point as I remember, because I know we've listened to him talk about this kind of stuff before. Whereas he's not talking about bringing socialism to people by wrapping yourself in the flag. Michael, we've heard about him before. Michael Parenti does not, forget about the struggle for women's rights or the struggle for racial justice, and understands obviously that all these things are connected. In my understanding, and we'll listen to him talk about this whole idea of patriotism and what it should actually mean, it doesn't mean abandoning indigenous people. It doesn't mean abandoning women's rights. It doesn't mean becoming chauvinists ourselves in order to sell socialism to people. But it's about trying to care about the people that live in this land and trying to raise their standard of living. All people. That's the kind of patriotism that he's talking about. No one has ever said, as far as I know anyways, that we need to become American chauvinists ourselves in order to change our society for better or bring socialism to the masses. It's a completely stupid argument that Parenti never said, but these people themselves will hold him up as being their kind of figurehead when they make these kind of arguments.
Well, I think it's time that the super-patriots account for their brand of patriotism. It has explained to us what it's all about. For instance, what do they mean when they say they love their
Lenin
country?
says the same thing about combating great Russian
What
nationalism.
do they mean by country?
I mean, the whole...
academia is not totally with
the whole... the whole concept of socialism and anti-imperialism was about liberating the oppressed masses of the world who are being oppressed by imperialism throughout the last century, predominantly American imperialism. So wrapping ourselves in the American flag or the Canadian flag, the junior partner in that imperialist project, is fundamentally contradictory with that goal in the first place. If we're trying to liberate or promote the liberation or the self-determination of oppressed and colonized masses around the world and in our own nations, such as indigenous people, which again, these people forget about settler colonialism. They forget about the struggle for indigenous rights. They forget about the idea of restoring land to indigenous control. Completely forget about these things and call it like bourgeois liberal identity politics or whatever. That is like fundamental to it, fundamental to socialism. It's exactly why Lenin promoted the Ukrainian identity in the first place, was because he supported self-determination and not wrapping everything in this chauvinistic Russian nationalism project. Like, this is pretty basic stuff. I'm not like Mr. Well-read theory guy here, but this is like basic day one stuff when we're talking about being or talking about Marxism or any of these tendencies. It's strange to me that people somehow do not get this.
About certain virtues, you learn to ask a lot of trivial, detailed questions in any case. So I asked myself, what do you mean by country? Do they love every region and locale in the United States? Well, obviously, very few of us have been to every region and locale, and nor would all of us find all the regions and locales all that lovable. Does love of country mean loving the American people? Well, again, even the most gregarious among us have met only a relatively small portion of the American people. And I would bet that these super patriots don't particularly love whole sectors of the American public, especially the more bigoted super patriots. In fact, rather dislike to associate with or have any positive identification with certain people because of reasons of ethnicity, religion, race, and class.
He's talking to the MAGA communists.
Patriots love America for its history and
chauvinists.
culture.
All the social chauvinists are now Marxists. Don't laugh.
Again, I'm really skeptical of that because it's my impression that they know very little about American history and culture, or rather, much of it is rather unappreciated by them. Furthermore, there's a terrible side to our history that's really not all that lovable. For instance, the extermination of Native American Indian nations, the enslavement of African people, the aggressive wars against Vietnam, Mexico, Canada. We lost 1,000 men on one attack on Canada. I just learned a little while ago. Central America, the Philippines, and elsewhere.
How do they pretend that like he's on their side with these things?
Aspects of American
He's
culture,
literally
certainly
linking the
not
struggle for racial
mind
justice and
abuse
indigenous
of
rights
primetime television,
with
the
this class
commercialism,
approach.
the corporate greed, the ecological devastation, the economic and racial injustice. If I'm being asked to prove my patriotism by loving American popular culture, then I might fail the test, I guess. Well,
I do love American popular culture. That's
the
one thing
America
about
that
me.
the super patriots claim to love is neither a geographical totality, nor is it a vast population, nor is it really a history or culture. As far as I can see, their America, and they say love America, is an ideological abstraction. It's an emotive symbol that can be embodied in other abstract symbols like the flag. It's sort of almost a love without content. I mean, how else can you love a flag? I mean, a flag, as you know, is a piece of rag on a stick. And it's got colors and things. And if you love that flag, and that flag's a symbol of your country, it's a kind of love that doesn't seem to have a content to it. Well, having said that, let me contradict myself. Because there is one real content to the super patriotism. Its main substance is militarism. The pacifist and political scientist and activist, by the way, good pacifists are all, not passive, they're pacifists, and they're quite active. The pacifist and activist, Milford Sibley, he once noted, quote, patriotism for most professional patriots seems to be inseparably connected with military violence and war.
He keeps saying patriots. It's very distracting. Is that a normal way of saying that? Patriots.
Indeed, the most militaristic among us seem to think that they are the most patriotic. Isn't that rather extraordinary? Patriotic virtues are equated with military ones. Our history's patriotic vignettes are usually military ones. Valley Forge, the Alamo, Gettysburg, the battleship Maine, Pearl Harbor, raising the flag on Iwo Jima, D-Day, the MIAs and POWs, and the like. Our country, right or wrong, but mostly our country at war or ready for war. The commemorations of our national leaders during national holidays would be incomplete without the marching troops, the weapon displays, martial music, formations of fighter planes zooming overhead. Even in local communities,
just had the air shows in Toronto.
Patriotic celebrations, the marching bands usually appear in semi-martial uniforms, the high school cadets with rifles on their shoulders, and if there's an army base nearby, even troops. I remember once sitting in Urbana, Illinois, July 4th, watching this parade come by, and on this float was suddenly this missile. Sort of small missile. But there was this
I pronounced that correctly, Cinnamon Challenge.
On this float, it was going by.
Majority.
And there were some people around me, and you know what they did? They started to applaud this inanimate object. I mean, there wasn't even a pilot or, you know, somebody else tending to it, or a soldier striding it and waving and going, yow, look at me, you know. I mean, it was too much for me. And they were just applauding this weapon. And a little jet fighter came by on the float, and they started applauding that too. This was at a time when these things were being used in Vietnam. Well, even July 4th fireworks sometimes are really a benign representation or replication of the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, as the top patriotic song on our patriotic hit parade goes. Max Weber once said that the state's irreducible characteristic is a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. And to be sure, state ceremonies in most states include some display of military force. Now, the way super patriots express their national pride leaves me uncomfortable. It seems the love we are to have for our country rests on some kind of competition with other countries, that it comes at an expense with other countries. It's a love that is predicated on some invidious comparison to other countries being lesser, being not as good. If we love our country, we have to believe it's better than any other. The super patriots will even ask us, don't you think this is the best country in the world? But you love it because it's better. It's, you know, it's something better. This, by the way, we might recognize.
You know what? When you come to Montreal one day and visit me, we're going to go hang out on a terrace somewhere, and you're going to have a fucking great time, and you're going to refer to it as its proper name.
Immediately as the being number one syndrome. I guess I must have heard about being number one for a long time, but the first time it ever stuck in my mind was when I heard President Richard Nixon, sometime in the late 60s, announce, and I quote, "America is still number one." The still, of course, you know, hints at some anxiety that there might be some slippage there. So I'm listening to this and I'm saying, okay, number one. That's, hey, number one. That makes me feel, you know, makes me feel like number one, and that's pretty good. But I was bothered by it because it presumed that we were in some kind of adversarial relationship to other nations, all other countries, and that somehow our greatness and our goodness could only be measured in comparison to them, only in our ability to be the top banana. So I said, all right, we're number one. And then one of those troublesome questions came again in my head, and I said, if we're number one, what are we number one in? I mean, what are you number one in? So I thought, I said, population?
TRRS.
No, the Chinese walk away with all the awards in that category. Geography? No, I think the Soviets and even Canada has more real estate than we do. We're not number one in size. I think Brazil, there's a number of countries, I think. I don't even want to think about it, about all the countries that might be ahead of us there. Steel production and other basic industries, I perked up a little. Well, we used to be number one in that, but we have slipped down the list because our super patriot corporate leaders have taken to abandoning our communities and exporting our jobs and bringing the factories off to Taiwan and Argentina and South Korea, where they can work for slave labor wages. Which, when you think about it, is not the way
democracy to South
patriots
Korea
to act, really, you know, take our factories away and all that. So I said, well, what are we number one? Are we number one in cuisine?
I'm pro-American cuisine,
Please.
personally.
I mean, in that category, we are strictly double digits. Way behind.
I'm pro-American cuisine.
France,
Michael's
China,
way off
Japan,
base here.
Mexico, Italy, India, Greece, and others. Are we number one in trade? I know we used to be number one in trade, but I believe the Japanese have outstripped us, or so it would seem to anybody who's walked into any department store in the last couple of years. So the question remains, I was sitting there saying, well, what are we number one in? You know? And the best I can tell from the super patriotic utterances is that it gets down to two things. One, wealth, with no concern as to how the wealth is distributed and how it's used and for what effects, and military power, with no concern again with how that military power is used and for whose interests that it might serve at home and abroad. A few years ago, President Reagan exclaimed, quote, "We are proud."
Yeah, this was in the 80s at the height of the sort of Japan panic.
America is the greatest. Now, the greatest, and when you say America is the greatest, that's another way of saying number one. America is number one. Now, supposedly we can love America
Number
and be
one
proud
biggest
of our
piece of
country
shit
because
country.
it's so great. The implication is, however, that if it weren't so great, it wouldn't be so lovable. And that began to trouble me. The super patriot's love of country seems predicated on the country's being up there, stronger and superior to other countries. What happened if it's going to slip? What happens? I started thinking, really, what about people from lesser lands, as we might call them? I mean, what about somebody from Luxembourg? I mean, now Luxembourg is number 122, you know. I mean, just barely ahead of San Marino in its military might. I said, what does someone from Luxembourg do? Do they go around shamefaced like this, you know? You say, you from Luxembourg? You from Luxembourg? I say, no, I'm French. No, I'm French. And you say, do you love your country? You know, they say, well, what is there to love? I mean, a few border police, no army, no navy. I mean, it's The super patriots were exhilarated by the U.S. aggression perpetrated against Grenada. To them, such military exploits are an affirmation of our nation's strength and worth, and therefore their own individual strength and worth. I mean, there's people who went around who really got off on the invasion of Grenada. Oh, we really kicked their ass. Oh, whoa, you know, like the Washington Redskins versus St. Mary's Junior High School football team. Huh? Oh, we really gave it to them. Ronald Reagan, the conqueror of Grenada, reflecting upon his greatest military victory, hailed the venture as an example of how the U.S. defends democracy. Since the U.S. has taken over in Grenada, Grenada's unemployment rate has tripled. Since it's been liberated from Moscow's yoke, Grenada's native enterprises and development projects and health and education programs that were initiated by the New Jewel movement have been abolished and been rolled back. Grenada is once more safe for private capital penetration. And the Reagan invasion served notice to the Caribbean nations they had better not try to develop alternative social orders that go against the multinational corporate way of doing things. That's what the invasion was about. And Ronald Reagan was right when he said it's not a question of nutmeg. It was not a question of direct U.S. capital investment in the country, which was small because it's only a country of 110,000 people. It was a question of serving notice to the Caribbean that you cannot be masters of your own destiny. You cannot develop your resources, your labor, your land, your capital, your technology for yourselves. You are there to be milked by us. That is by
Axe
people
Cunningham,
of
thanks so much for
Ronald
the 6
Reagan's
months.
class, not by us. We got milked on that
Really
too.
appreciate
We
that.
paid for that expedition. We paid for that invasion. It was our sons who died in that invasion. And it was more than 18, I assure you. Questions were raised about the number of people killed. Now, most super patriots don't think about Grenada in that way. They think about it the other way. You know, it was a real victory, as I say. But most of the world didn't see that invasion as some kind of victory. It wasn't perceived as a sign of strength by Latin America and most other nations. It was seen as a sign of weakness. It wasn't seen as a glorious thing. It was seen as a shameful thing. When the most powerful country in the world has to invade a micro state of 110,000 people and feel proud that they won. There were more citations given for heroism on Grenada than there were soldiers that went. There were literally hundreds of citations for officers, lieutenant colonels, and all that. Many of them never left the Pentagon through that whole operation, and they were all given these citations by Mr. Reagan to validate the heroism, the enormous accomplishment, the patriotism of this great venture. If anything, Grenada ought to make us wonder that maybe America isn't number one. Indeed, there's someone going around this country who's saying that. He's the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. In a speech in Chicago in March 1988, during the primary campaigns, Michael Dukakis said, quote, "We need a strategy that will make America number one." I said, make America number one? I thought it was number one. I mean, certainly since Grenada we're number one.
Dukakis was a MAGA guy.
I see that with these liberals sowing seeds of doubt in our minds. The next month in Cleveland, Michael Dukakis announced, "We're going to take charge of our economic future, and we're not going to stop until America is number one." Like all his predecessors, Dukakis doesn't explain what's so important about being number one. Well, what the hell does it mean to be number one anyway? This preoccupation with being number one strikes me, ladies and gentlemen, as I say, as a sign of weakness, not of strength. As a sign of insecurity, not of security. A people who know who they are don't worry about being number one. A people who are in touch with the deeper values of social justice and democracy don't get a number one thrill from stomping on a tiny nation. A people who seek friendship and cooperation with other peoples don't need to lord it over other nations and outshine them. Such a people don't have to find reassurances in themselves by looking at or imagining the deficiencies of others. And they don't feel threatened by the accomplishments and strengths of other people. They don't panic when they fail to win.
We should become ironic
the most gold medals,
Dukakis bros.
most medals at the Olympics.
Dakadoon.
You watch the Olympic coverage, it's an amazing case of super patriotism. I remember the LA Olympics, the Summer Olympics. There was one swim meet I watched, and the camera was on this American swimmer the whole time. The guy came in third. And as he came in, the announcement of who won, who got the gold and silver, wasn't made by the ABC announcer. You could hear it, like in the pool. It was an off-mic announcement. I suppose you could hear it, but I didn't catch it. And they just kept saying, I forget the guy's name. "Oh, Tom feels bad about that. Yeah, let's get a replay on that last spin." And the camera followed him getting out of the water and walking on. "Yeah, it's really terrible." And I'm keep saying, who won that match? Who won it? Who won it? I mean, who were the other guys? Was anybody else swimming in that pool? And they covered him all the way. You literally could not find out who won it. The Winter Olympics in '84. I noticed as the GDR kept winning more medals, the age at which their athletes began training got younger and younger. They won a few medals, and the announcer said, "Well, in East Germany, the athletes, I hear the kids, they begin training at 11 and 12 years old. Then they won a few more medals by day 3, they were saying. And I hear they begin training at as young as 7 and 8. And by the end, they won a few more medals, and they said, well, in the GDR, they begin training as young as 4 and 5. And there was a cut shot of these little toddlers on the ice skates with their parents. And I say, my God, those commies are just ruthless what they do to their children.
Imagine kids being forced to do sports, not like America.
Super-patriotic morality is an inversion of individual morality.
I'm a Marxist Dukakisist.
For the super-patriot, the nation-state is something more than an instrumental value. It's something more than a way of organizing order and law and whatever else to carry out other good things in life. It's not merely an instrumental value, it becomes an end value in itself. Those other things are no longer the end, they become instruments to serve this end. The state is no longer there to serve us, we are here to serve and glorify the state. The state becomes an entity of force unto itself, a powerfully abstracted symbol that claims our ultimate and total loyalty. A moral object, a moral entity in itself whose existence and growth are taken as self-justifying. You know, a question could be raised. What's so important about the state existing and growing and continuing and expanding and flourishing, whatever else? That's taken as self-justifying. In fact, that question would be considered unpatriotic. The moral code that applies to nationalism does not operate the same as the moral code that applies to individuals. The premises that governs all individual morality is that your behavior must at some point lead to self-restraint and even self-sacrifice. In individual morality, there are certain things you should not do, even if they're convenient, advantageous, and whatever else. Even if you have the impulse for them, even if they advance your self-interest, you must not do them. That's what the whole essence or code of individual morality is, as in thou shalt not. These premises are inverted when applied to a nation's behavior, and they often lead to terrible and untrammeled excesses. Individual morality is predicated on the notion that sin, that is harmful and unjust behavior, that's what I mean by sin. There is such a thing as sin, harmful and unjust behavior.
The Olympics coverage thing
That
was
sin
crazy.
is always
like,
within the human.
we talked about it when it was going on, Cradbibs. The absolutely unhinged, psychotic coverage of the Olympics in China were just like, I felt like I was having my brain scrambled by watching it and paying attention to it. It was so insane.
Potential. To err is human, to sin is all too human. But the nation state is something more than human, and there lies
They were
the
implying
power
that
of its
Uyghur
appeal.
athletes were not really Uyghurs, or anytime like a Chinese person did something, they would go into the hushed tones, which they would never do about any other country. They deleted the host city speech, but yeah, they see a Chinese athlete, and rather than just focusing on what they're accomplishing, it's like, China is, of course, being accused of numerous human rights violations, and all these fucking Olympic broadcasters would all of a sudden become geopolitical analysts. Why aren't these Chinese athletes speaking up about their human rights abuses? Something that is never, ever asked of American athletes. Why aren't they using their victory speech to talk about what's happening with the Uyghurs? You know, it's just completely preposterous. So many liberal sports guys in Canada just getting off their fucking sanctimonious high horse was just pathetic and embarrassing to look at.
At the heart of the super-patriotic ethic is the belief that the nation's existence and its actions are so endowed with virtue as to place it above the commonplace rules of life. The restraints that apply to ordinary humans don't restrain the nation. So convinced of its supreme virtue, the nation knows no other restraint than the limitations of its own self-interest, its own desires, and the limitations of its own power. So ultimately, the restraint on a nation is the limitation of its power and the power of others. Ladies and gentlemen, the difference between individual morality and national morality is a very real one. When the aggrandizing individual commits an evil or harmful act, there's some sense that he is to be punished. He or
NFL
she
game, you're
or
kicked
should
out of the
be
league.
punished.
And then it gets absorbed by all these Democratic
At least some
politicians so
questions
they can
raised
do
about
it,
whether
but
proper
you still don't have a
standards of
job.
conduct haven't been violated. But some of the most outrageous acts, which would be outrageous under an individual moral code and unsupportable in civil life, are applauded as heroism when performed in the name of the nation. Thou shalt not becomes thou shalt do anything by any means necessary if it can be said to be in the national interest and if it serves national security. Well, who are the super patriots? They can be found in high and low places. They can be found in the White House. They can be found in your local American Legion posts.
Dan Simpson Raiders, hello. What's up? Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the raid. How is the Dan Simpson stream today? We're talking about MAGA communism, patriotic socialism, and all that bullshit today. Some of these folks often like to reference Parenti's commentary on patriotism and these subjects, so we're debunking a little bit of that today. I hope you had a good stream. Please smash the follow button if you can, folks. Getting ever closer to 9K followers, so a quick follow button smash would be very, very helpful. And I got to go in about half an hour to get my kid to bring him to the dentist, so I'm going to try and power through the rest of this speech as soon as possible. Quick as possible.
But super patriotism,
Thanks again,
I would
Dan.
argue, is not a product of mass psychology. It's not a product of mass macho psychology as such, although it certainly appeals to machismo, often resorting to a kind of John Wayne approach to foreign policy. I'll give you one quote. President Lyndon Johnson: "The U.S. will not act the great giant that is having its hands tied to get pushed around by a little dwarf armed with a penknife." That's Ronald Reagan. Same guy.
And I mean, here's one of the main cruxes of the first 25 minutes of this, though, which he's talking about these like chauvinistic American patriots and the way patriotism is tied into militarism. And these chauvinists who love the people of America so much, the people on the land, except for, of course, the indigenous people, the black and brown people. They don't care about women's rights. They don't care about LGBTQIA plus rights. They're chauvinists. And so what it seems like to me is these MAGA communist guys have tried to decouple themselves from the militarism aspect of that, and are promoting this kind of like anti-imperialist or vaguely anti-imperialist kind of analysis while still tailing all those chauvinistic beliefs that Parenti is criticizing, while these same people like uphold Parenti as being this as this hero of theirs, this folk hero of theirs. But they're still engaged in that they're just embracing the chauvinism. They're embracing waving around the flag. They're excluding all these important groups from this working class movement that they came to care about, the struggling masses, which of course don't include indigenous people or gay or lesbian or queer or trans people or black and brown people or whatever. They've embraced all that chauvinism, and they think because they've eschewed the militarism aspect of it, that gives them this kind of credibility, but it does not.
Guys, that's Lyndon Johnson talking. The little dwarf with the penknife was Vietnam. We've been taught to think that the Archie Bunker is the prototype of the super patriot. In fact, Archie is one of its victims, one of super patriotism's victims. He's one of its consumers. He pays the taxes, he bleeds, he sends his kids off and all that, and he falls for it. The suppliers, the pushers of super patriotism, most conspicuously are our top political leaders, our publicists, our media pundits, our institutional heads, including some college presidents and corporation leaders. Super patriotic ideology is assiduously propagated by the ruling class of this society. That is the essence, that has been the essence of the Reagan propaganda effort over these 8 years. Like the anti-communist ideology, which is just the other side of that same coin, it is not a product of mass hysteria, although its goal often is to instigate mass hysteria. But ideas do not float around in social space. You see, there's no such thing as just an idea around like a virus. In fact, viruses don't quite float around. They go according to certain social relations. And so with ideas are mediated through social structure, through social organization, through a social system. That is, through organized status roles, groups, families, schools, communities, media, other institutions, whatever else. And some ideas then are mass marketed. Some ideas are taught to us from day one in those little flag salutes we have at school. That Ronald Reagan isn't just getting off in irrelevant things when he talks about flag salutes and prayers in the schools and pushing those symbols in school. He wants to institutionalize, he wants to internalize within kids at the first grade level, if you will, this gut instinct to wave that flag, to rally around that flag, to get in there when it's the Pueblo or the Grenada or Central America or whatever else, and not ask too many questions and just say, my country, and I love my country, and let's do it. I think it's not a manifestation of individual psychology. I think it's a mediated thing, because the super patriotism, machoism, is not something that just swaggers around in any direction. It's directed toward very particular, specific political goals. It has very specific targets, like Cuba, Vietnam, Nicaragua, the USSR, Grenada. Countries that are, or in case of Grenada, were developing social orders that threatened global capitalism. But in relation to some other countries, the super patriots aren't so macho. In fact, they're very passive, very suffering, very accommodating, very supportive. They don't have the macho virtues that what the patriarchs would call the feminine virtues almost. They're this way when it comes to Chile, Guatemala, El Salvador, Indonesia, South Africa, Israel, South Korea, Zaire. Countries that support the interests of multinational capitalism and imperialism. So psychological categories in politics offer some explanation regarding predispositions, but they do not explain the actual policy directions. For that, you have to look at such things as class interests, economic interests, and other such things. One of the key functions of super-patriotism is to blur the differences in class interests in our society and try to convince us that we're all in the same boat, rich and poor alike, you, me, the Mellons, the Morgans, the Rockefellers. We are made to believe that
that's the Nazi shit.
people
Michael
of the
talks
United
about this
States
in
have a community of interest
Black
with
Shirts
the
and
giant
Reds.
multinationals. The very companies that at any time might export our jobs and abandon and desert our communities in that very unpatriotic way, as I said before. In truth, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, on almost every issue, we the people are not in the same boat with the big financiers and companies. The costs of our policies are not equally shared. We pay the brunt of the costs. The benefits of our policies are not equally enjoyed. We don't get much of that. I give you the case of the Persian Gulf, where it's costing us $2.50 for every dollar's worth of oil that's coming out of the Persian Gulf. That's not so irrational because we're paying the 2.5 and the oil companies are making the dollar. Even if it's not coming to the U.S., only 4% of that comes to the U.S. The Seven Sisters, the oil companies, the big oil cartels don't care if they sell it in the U.S. or in Japan, France, which is where it's really going. And we're not protecting the oil supply for Japan or France. We are protecting the oil supply of those companies. So there's a case of policy not being shared equally. There's a case where you have to have a class analysis rather than a flag-waving analysis. This is true, by the way, this is equally true of ancient empires as well as
you can't have a class analysis that simultaneously waves the flag around? What a crazy concept. Michael's one of these SJW woke ideology guys, I guess.
Modern empires. In 1919, the conservative economists, very prominent economist, a very creative one too, Joseph Schumpeter, he described the imperialism of classical Rome in words that might sound familiar to present-day Americans. Quote, "That policy which pretends to aspire to peace but unerringly generates war.
That's right.
The policy of continual preparation for war. The policy of meddlesome interventionism." He's writing in 1919 about ancient Rome. "There was no corner of the known world where some interest was not alleged to be in danger or under attack. If the interests were not Roman, they were those of Rome's allies. And if Rome had no allies, then allies would be invented. When it was utterly impossible to contrive such an interest, why, then it was the national honor that had been insulted. The fight was always invested with an aura of legality. Rome was always being attacked by evil-minded neighbors, always fighting for a breathing space. The whole world was pervaded by a host of enemies, and it was manifestly Rome's duty to guard against their indubitably aggressive designs. They were enemies who only waited to fall upon the Roman people. Such a policy can be understood," Schumpeter continues, "only by ascertaining what, quote, domestic class interests benefited from it." Even, you see, conservatives can have a class analysis as long as it's 2,000 years ago. They won't do it here. What domestic class interests benefited from the growth, the ruthlessness, the power of the Roman Empire? Schumpeter goes on, he says, "Those who gained were the aristocracy of landlords, agricultural entrepreneurs, born of struggle against their own people, whose dominance rested," that is the entrepreneurs and landlords, "their dominance rested on control of the state machine." The historian Ernst Badian, also talking about Rome, "No administration in history has ever devoted itself so wholeheartedly to fleecing its subjects for the private benefit of its ruling class as Rome of the last age of the Republic." And he too was writing before the Reagan administration came into office.
You are listening to author and political analyst Michael Parenti on super-patriotism and the importance of being number one. At the end of the program, there will be information on how to obtain a copy of this talk.
Now, seeing the hypocrisy and evil that's done under the name of patriotism, there were many on the left, especially during the Vietnam era, who began attacking the symbols of patriotism, who began attacking the symbols of our country. They put blame on everything on an entity called America, and they even spelt America with 3 Ks. They burned American flags. thereby convincing millions of our...
I know non-compete also has tried to like debate and talk to some of these people, which just ended up being a nightmare talking to some of these folks. So I'm glad that they did the videos, but it shows the futile nature of trying to actually speak to some of these people. We should watch the MAGA communism video from them, for sure.
In any case, they blamed America for what was being done in its name by a coterie of imperialists and militarists and capitalists. And these imperialists and militarists and capitalists, in turn, legitimated their own crimes by wrapping themselves around this same flag. They were a lot smarter. While we in the New Left were burning flags, I never burned a flag, but I mean, you know, our guys were burning flags, they were wrapping themselves around in the flag. And they could conveniently brand then all opposition to their policies as attacks against America. Not criticism of Nixon, not attacks of Nixon's policies, but attacks against America. It was giving them then a remarkable psychological advantage. It became very easy for ruling class representatives like Richard Nixon in that day, and today people like Gene Kirkpatrick and Ronald Reagan, to brand the protesters as part of that, quote, hate America crowd. I think perhaps the anarchist tendencies in the New Left added fuel to this super-patriotic bonfire. Anarchists see the state as the enemy, rather than the particular policies and particular class interests of particular states. In a sense, I would argue, I don't want to push this too much,
even when the state is socialist, it's still bad.
Patriots. They elevate the state to a disembodied entity, one that's supremely evil. The super-patriot elevates it to an entity that's supremely virtuous. That is an end of itself and a moral existence of its own. And so they attack the symbols of the state, and they play right into the hands of leaders who have always sought, who always seek to equate ruling class interests with the state itself, who always seek to equate their particular class interests with the general interests, who always seek to equate their policies, their ventures with the needs of the American people.
And I think this is something that's worth investigating a little bit as well, too, right? Just like the idea that like burning the American flag or the Canadian flag at a protest can not only alienate people that might be on your side, but also provides fuel to this reactionary backlash to that. And like, I understand that. I understand not just showing, even though, you know, we understand that it is the United Snakes of America, like we all do. We're on the same page about that. The evil empire and all that stuff. And I think simultaneously you can talk about the ways that like engaging in this kind of symbolism of burning flags or trampling on flags or whatever it is can be alienating to people that are not quite there yet, that haven't like really ever really understood that kind of analysis, and does provide a sort of fuel for this reactionary backlash. But what that doesn't, so we can talk about that, right? We can talk about why like that's maybe not, even if that might be a reflection of our values or our feelings about what America or Canada stands for, we can understand that it can be alienating to people. And it might be a turnoff towards coalition building to lead with that. But what that doesn't mean at the same time is that we need to go the other way and wrap ourselves in these symbols, because that's apparently going to shut down this kind of criticism. Then they won't be able to criticize us because we're wrapped in the symbols of nationalism. These reactionaries won't understand that we're actually trying to enact some kind of big transformative change because we've wrapped ourselves in these symbols of nationalism. But then that gets like, that is silly in and of itself. And we've talked about as well how then that goes in another way, right? And then that becomes, when you wrap yourselves in these symbols of nationalism or patriotism, then it becomes alienating for people that have been victims of horrendous crimes by people waving that same flag. You know? And that's who are you building a coalition with? I understand that it can be alienating for people when you're trying to build a coalition, but yeah, it's alienating for indigenous people who are also working class people. When you wrap yourself in the flag or you pretend that settler colonialism doesn't exist, it can be alienating for people around the world that have been victims of mass murder campaigns by the same flag. And these people are like, they'll simultaneously criticize American militarism and then wrap themselves in the same flag that has been used to justify mass murder of millions of people all around the world. Is this the same problem with ACAB? I don't know, because like I think it's really important to get across to people the harmful and reactionary nature of and what the function of the police is. And I think that's kind of non-negotiable. We can't pretend to. I think this idea of we need to organize with the police and include the police in these working class movements, I just don't really think that makes sense, because the police are not working class. They're not on the side. When you have workers lining up on one side and the bosses lining up on the other side, who are the people that the police go to beat the shit out of? It's the workers. When you've got black and brown and indigenous people lining up on one side and, arguing against systemic racism, who do you have? The militarized cops coming in, and what are they doing? They're beating the shit out of those people. They're there to break the strike. They're there to enforce all these hierarchies. So I think we can say two things: that it can be a little bit alienating for people who have been told, oh, it's just a few bad apples. We need to support the police and respect the police and reform them. We can maybe sometimes understand that message can be a little bit alienating to people, but that doesn't mean we need to pretend that cops are working class, or that we need to support or promote that. And I think it's really important to educate people about the harmful role that the police play in our society. So it can be both, right? We can maybe adjust rhetoric a little bit when it comes to building coalitions, but we shouldn't pull any punches when it comes to talking about the role that the cops play in enforcing these exact same economic or structural systems which are used to divide and oppress people. We need to be abundantly clear about that, in the same way that we're abundantly clear about the role that the U.S. government plays around the world, sometimes under the guise of that same kind of policing propaganda to commit violent crimes and enforce this very strict economic system all around the world. We shouldn't pull any punches about that, and we can talk about that openly and honestly without being alienating. I think that's not hard to do. And Simica, are you joking right now? You say that's a little unfair to police. Most aren't happy about using state-sanctioned violence against their neighbors. They're just following orders. I'd argue you should cut someone some slack if they feel bad about the brutality they have to use. That's a joke, right? Just to be clear. Just to be totally clear about that. And Simica is always joking. Okay, that's good. Good to know. I thought so, but you never know sometimes. With some of these jokers in the chat, you never know. I think part of the issue is that the other half of people,
count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to
that are
talk
being
you through all
alienated,
this.
Indigenous Americans, etc., are so far out of the average political conception that a fucking reminder is needed to reaffirm their basic existence of these groups in the political scene. I think that's a good point as well. Thank you, Lawbrarian, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. And Time Abolition says, reading Lenin State and Rev at the moment, the state arises where, when, and insofar as class antagonism objectively cannot be reconciled. That's right. It does say that. It does say that. Great stuff. There's 20 minutes left in this lecture, and I got to go in 7 minutes. So I think we're going to have to unfortunately end the lecture there. I didn't have quite time to get through the whole thing, but again, when we're going to be talking about what these MAGA communists or patriotic socialists or whatever they are, and poking holes in that argument, these same people will point to Parenti's lectures to talk about why they need to be patriots. But I think when you actually listen to Parenti talk about these things, it does not at all match up with their idea of what patriotism is or what it's supposed to mean. Like I was saying, they've detached the patriotism idea from the militarism, but they're still they're chauvinists. They're social chauvinists. Talk about Lenin and State and Revolution. All the social chauvinists are now Marxists. That's the MAGA communists. And we're not going to build a movement or build a coalition or build socialism by becoming chauvinists ourselves and wrapping our socialist or Marxist message or Leninist message or whatever it is, wrapping it in this kind of like imagery of patriotism, or wrapping it in the flag, or obscuring it behind this kind of like social reactionary beliefs. And I think it is stupid to think that that would be a good idea or a good thing to do. Yeah, so there's the video in the chat. I posted that there. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. It was a pleasure to hang out with all of you. I'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Ideally, maybe. We will see. There's another 5 minutes for people to subscribe. I'm going to go in 5 minutes. So if anyone else wants to support this show and you enjoy this content and you want to support the work that I do right here on twitch.tv, please, if you can, subscribe. $5 a month. Totally free of charge with a Amazon Prime account, which you can convert to a Twitch Prime sub. Totally free. Every little bit helps. Got to make the little number go up every single day.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
so
to
if you
talk you through
can,
all this.
like our good friend Dr. Maggot just did, please support TRRS with a sub, a gifted sub. If you're a new chatter or you're a first-time watcher, new subs are discounted right now because of Slubtember. So if anyone else wants to support this program, that's how you do it. Please subscribe. It's very, very helpful, and I appreciate it a lot. And you help keep this show on the air. The only way I'm able to keep doing this show is through the incredible generosity of the chatters, the listeners, the community members. And I appreciate it a lot, and I love you very much. Everyone, every single person that contributes to this program. So many fans, so little heat mitigation. It's just blowing the warm air on me right now. That's what's happening with my fan situation. It's blowing hot air on me. Not very pleasant. It was not a very pleasant sleep last night. I'll tell you that much. Only caught the back end of today, but thanks for the brief respite. And as always, one love, Rob, slub to rib, please. Thank you, Dr. Maggot. Should have a bit more time yesterday. Don't love that I have to leave at 2:30 today, but should have a bit more time. And then starting next week, I should be able to start doing some longer streams throughout the week, especially if I have a little bit of an earlier starting time. We'll see how it goes. Do we have any other takers, folks? Do we have any other takers? Do we hear 27? Is that a possibility? That's barely anything at all. Sorry, Rob, but I will not be renewing my subscription as I found another anti-imperialist streamer who has 2 Lenin busts displayed behind him. You mean this?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
How quickly you forget about little Lenin. How quickly you forget about little tiny Lenin. You think I'm gonna have less than 2 Lenin busts, really? How little you know me. How little you know me. I actually have another one somewhere, so I actually have 3.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. Thank you. And who... Oh, and that was another gifted sub from Dr. Maggot? Oh, thank you, Dr. Maggot, for another gifted sub. I really appreciate that. I gotta get more busts. I love my Lenin bust. I would like to get some more. Do we have any other takers, folks? Any other takers? We got 1 more minute. One more minute. You know, someone, if they really wanted to, could trigger the highly elite and exclusive 10 gift sub alert and get this stream all the way to the sub goal. In theory, you know. What is this? This is some cool, like, weird Soviet cartoon shit on this one. Thank you, friends, again for watching the show and tuning in this week. I will be back tomorrow. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow. Oh, Time Abolition, continuing the gift sub you got from an anonymous gifter. Thank you, Time Abolition. For some reason, that didn't trigger an alert. I don't really understand how that works, actually. But thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and manually increase the number. Thank you very much, Time Abolition. Wonderful. I was submitting a list of non-subs to the Stasi, so keep a lookout. That's right. You'd better. You'd better watch out. It's just like in socialism, right? You still got to work. Everyone's got to work. We don't need any of these freeloaders. These freeloading non-sub chatters. I'm just joking. It's okay. It's okay. I'll see you tomorrow, folks.